Good evening, and thank you all again for being here and taking the time to attend our Family Academy session. I'm going to go ahead and branch you all out to your respective languages.
Dr. Bailey, we need a translation the feature.
Yeah, I'm trying to turn it on right now. Click start. Hold on for a quick moment. And Alvina. There we go. Okay. Thank you for that getting through that technical difficulty. So tonight we are excited to participate with to share our special webinar that we have this evening. Tonight, this event is being recorded and it will be posted on our GUSD website starting tomorrow. We are excited to have Ms. Jacqueline Knight to come in and present to all of us about social narratives and how they play a part in our everyday learning and learning environment. If you have any additional questions that you would like to ask, we ask that you put it into the chat and we will follow up with you at the end of this presentation. For right now, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Ms. Jacqueline Knight. The floor is yours.
Great, thank you so much. Can everybody hear me okay? Are we good? All right, so I'm gonna keep moving because we have a very limited amount of time to be together, and I wanna make sure that everybody gets the information that they came here for. So my name is Jackie Knight. I work for Glendale Unified School District in the Special Education Department, and we're gonna talk about social narratives today. So this presentation came from the California Autism Professional Training and Information Network. And if you have more questions about what that is, please feel free to visit captain.ca.gov. It's a really wonderful organization, and I'm appreciative for everything that they've given us. So our learning objectives today is to describe what evidence-based practices are, to describe steps to implement social narratives, the different types of social narratives, how to create a variety of social narratives, and then also how to implement them. What I want to show you is that one of the reasons why I personally like social narratives so much is because social narratives are effective for students from preschool all the way through high school. Now, they're most effective between the 3 and the 11-year-old range. However, if we look at the secondary levels, they're also effective for communication, social interaction, as well as addressing challenging or interfering behavior. So this is that can be used for all different age ranges. So very quickly, social narratives are visually represented stories that describe a social situation, an expectation, or response we are looking for to promote social understanding. And it could be used for communication, problem solving, self-management, peer relations, initiating, maintaining social interactions, etc. They're often written by private, speech language pathologists or teachers, but they can also be written by parents. And that's why we wanted to make sure that our parents know that and give them that information. One of the things that's important to remember is that we write the social narratives based on where the student is at with their written language, not necessarily where who's writing it is at. So that's just a little thing to remember. We can use social narratives after a social faux pas has occurred, right? And we've observed that the social faux pas has occurred. So now we know that we need to address that issue. We could use it prior to a new social experience, or actually even a change in experiences. For example, a change in routine or a change in location or a change in doctor. And we could also use it as an intervention to reduce behaviors. So we write these social narratives to help our learners, your children or students, right, to learn new routines, to provide missing information for them, to help the students cope with and adjust to change, help with their interpersonal understanding, to aid the development of, and it says appropriate behaviors, but I of them as socially conventional behaviors, right? So those expected behaviors, to provide insight into what other people are thinking and feeling, which is also called theory of mind. And we also want to make sure that they're personalized to the student, so that the student feels that it's their story. Goals that can be addressed. This is a huge list of goals addressed. Teaching behavior skills, making how to play with materials, how to interact with peers, increasing social interactions or classroom expected behaviors, how to, increase compliments given, but also compliments received. Some children don't like to receive compliments, so we could write a social narrative for that. And really, the list goes on and on. I have written social narratives for probably everything on earth at this point. Going to the dentist, a student went, crossing the street, just all sorts of different things. And I really find them to be a powerful tool. And I hope that you will agree with me at the end of this. So there's two types of social narratives that are research-based, and those are social stories and power cards. Okay. Now we call social narratives is sort of the umbrella term for everything under it. Social stories is what most people know, and that's a trademark term. So we try not to say only social stories, because there are these other types of social narratives. Stories was created by Dr. Carol Gray, and it's an entire curriculum, actually. There's also power cards, and power cards are short to the point scenarios with pictures to help a learner. And it doesn't have to have a picture, but usually they have pictures, and it helps the learner understand the situation at hand. So those are really the two that we're going to be looking at today. There are the social articles, the cartooning, the comic strip conversations, and the social autopsies. But I like to focus, and Captain really has us focus a lot on the researched materials. So social stories, right, are the trademark term for social parts of social narratives, right, to help a learner with autism understand a particular social situation by explaining the situation, the cues around it, and then other people's perspectives. They provide that missing information that our learners may be missing. Okay, and so we're going to talk more about social narratives and social stories, but that just gives you an idea. Carol Gray did create an app. It's kind of on the older side, and we're going to discuss tools that can be used that are a little bit more up to date, but I just did want to say that Dr. Gray and her community did create one. You should have received an email, and I'm hoping this is the case, that if you signed up for the presentation, that you should have received an email with a packet attached to it. And these are our worksheets that go with how to, when you're thinking about creating the social story and the implementing, right, of the social story. So there's a planning worksheet, there's a fidelity, and we're going to talk about that more as we go on. But just wanted to let you know that that's there. And this is the planning worksheet, right? So we want to think about what is it that our student is doing, right? We have to think about which evidence-based practice we wanted to use. So we've chosen social narratives. And what is it that we're observing? What's our baseline? What's going on in the situation that the child is missing or the student is missing, right? Who's involved? Is it the same people every time? Is it different people, right? What's going on with the social, what's the nuances, right? What's going on in the social situation? And how does our learner respond? What is the learner missing, right, in that response? What are other team members telling us? And this is going to help us build that social story. Here's the checklist within that packet, right? We want to make sure that once it's built, we have, is it written from the learner's point of view, etc. So the packet that was sent to you is very, very detailed. And I like it a lot. So we're going to get into that a little bit more now. So here's an example of a social story when there is no chocolate milk. I have lunch at school on school days. Usually I have chocolate milk for lunch. Sometimes there's no chocolate milk. When there's no chocolate milk, it makes me upset. It's okay to be upset, but it's not okay to scream. When I scream, no one knows what I want, and it may scare my friends. The next time there is no chocolate milk, I will try to choose something else to drink or ask the cafeteria ladies if there's any more chocolate milk, or ask a friend if they would like to trade milks. Using my words instead of screaming will make my friends and teachers happy. I will feel proud that I was able to solve a problem without screaming. Okay, so things to notice, it's short, but it gets right to the point of the situation. Okay, and we're going to look at more, we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive now. So before we write the social story, we want to make sure we've gathered all the information about the situation. So for example, why is our student, like, somebody might be observing the student and not understanding that the student is upset that there's no chocolate milk. They may not get that piece. They may only see the screaming portion, right? And so then it's like, oh, well, this child is just screaming randomly. It's not going to be random. There's going to be a purpose to it, right? So they had to gather that information about, oh, every time there's no chocolate milk, our child gets upset, our student gets upset, right? So from our last story, that's what we gathered, okay? If you can, you want to observe the social situation, right? You can't, especially as a parent, you're not going to be able to observe it at school, but you're going to have social situations at home that you can observe. So you want to observe it, right? And see what's going on so that you can try to think about your child's perspective. So things that you want to think about when you're observing, what's happening? Who's involved? Is it the same person every time, right? We want to think about what's going on. And we just saw that checklist a second ago. You really want to go in and do a little bit of a deep dive and see, why is the student having what I would call a maladaptive behavior in that moment? What is going on within what is possibly going on within their mind? Okay. And so the next thing we want to think about is, what is the story about, right? So what is the skill or the behavior you want to establish for your child? Okay, what do you want them to be able to do? Do we want them asking a question instead of blurting out in class? Do we want them eating at the table instead of pacing while they eat? Do we want them sharing their toys or the basketball? That's a big one. I've noticed a lot is that the kids don't like to share their basketballs. So sharing could be a really good one. Maybe they get upset when they don't win. Okay. And maybe they're not learning how to play games to have fun. Perhaps they're impulsive when they cross the street and we want them to learn street safety. Another one could be talking calmly, right? Versus yelling, right? So there's lots of different things that when we look at a student, we could say, okay, we want to look at the situation and what is the behavior that we want to address? And then we create the story from around that. I feel like we just lost someone in we did. Sherelle, just to let you know, we just lost someone in the chat, in the rooms.
Okay.
Okay, so you're welcome. So step 2, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at your child's ability to read and or understand language, right? So read visuals. Can they read sentences? What's their vocabulary level like? And what should the complexity of the story be? I would say that the 2 biggest mistakes that are made are often not just overestimating what our students can understand, but actually underestimating. If you make the social story too babyish, right, for the child, you're going to turn them off from reading it. So you want to find that sweet spot where you have the photos and or the images, or maybe no photos, no images, depending on the student. Are we looking at 3-word sentences, or can we use sentences that have and, but, for, the conjunctions, right? Can we make them longer sentences? What kind of vocabulary do we need to use? For example, for crossing the street social narrative, are we going to say automobile or are we going to say car, right? So we want to think about that piece as well, that vocabulary level, because again, you don't want to make it so easy that it turns our student off. And then the complexity of the story, right? So we really want to we really think about, again, who the student is, not who the other students are in the room, not what the academic expectations are, but who your student is at that time, okay? And then we're going to write the story. So when we're writing down the story, we need to break down what the skill is. So I'm going to give an example. So we're going to review the skill. We're going to break it down. What does the student need to understand to perform the skill? And then we're going to look at examples of social tasks that are broken down, right? So I'm going to give you an example of crossing the street. Crossing the street, right, many adults don't look where they're going and they just cross, right? But we don't want our children and students doing that. That's not safe. When we get a story that might talk about when I get to the corner, I stop, right? I need to, what do? I stop. I'm just thinking about what I normally do. I look to the left, I look to the right, I look to the left again, and then I'm going to cross. If there's a traffic light, I'm going to wait for the traffic light to have the green hand or the go sign. And then if there are the parallel lines to indicate the crosswalk, I'm going to walk within those lines because that's the safe zone, right? But the other thing that I do, and I don't know how many other people do this, but one of the things that I do is I actually look at the drivers. I am under 5 feet tall. And I want to make sure that, so I am a very short person. And so I want to make sure that the drivers see me. If they're in a raised truck or a lifted car, they may not. So I try to I look the drivers in the eye to make sure that they can see me. So these are all the things that I do. And then when I cross the street, I decide which way I'm going and I move on. So I would create a small task analysis with that before I started writing the story. Okay. Those steps from the task analysis are exactly what we do to go into writing the story. So basically what you're doing is you're creating an outline prior to just jumping in. The fancy word is task analysis, breaking down the steps, but basically you're creating an outline that's a little bit detailed. Now, when we're writing a social story, we want to write direct sentences and we want to write describing sentences, okay? Sentences that describe can be descriptive, perspective, cooperative, or affirmative sentences. And the idea is that we use more descriptive sentences than we do directive sentences, okay? So sentences so those directive sentences provide suggestions for behaviors or responses, okay? So the direct sentences are going to be telling the student what to do, we want them doing. I look both ways before I cross the street. But you can also have those cooperative sentences or the perspective sentences. I like to walk to 7-Eleven. When I walk to 7-Eleven, I often have to cross the street. So do you see what I'm doing? I've got it in the first person perspective. I'm word I, and I'm talking about what's going on. I'm not just saying I look both ways before I cross. Okay. I just heard a beep in my ears and I really hope I'm not losing my mic. Okay, so I'm good. All right. The mic on my computer doesn't work, so I have to make sure that my mic keeps working. All right. So in your packet, there are descriptions of the different types of sentences. So descriptive sentences are facts and information, such as clean hands help people stay healthy. Some dogs are big and some are small, right? In the mornings, I get dropped off at my classroom. Perspective sentences is the person's feelings or opinions. I might feel happy and excited, right? My teacher likes it. I may feel mad, okay? Where cooperative is describe how other people may help the learner. When I feel sad, my teacher can help me, right? And then affirmative sentences are, it's like that, you know, when we tell ourselves affirmations, it's okay. It's a good idea. I'm doing a good job, right? Or I am happy, right? So those affirmative sentences. Notice that there's way more of those descriptive type of sentences, perspective, cooperative, and affirmative, than there are of the directive, okay? I like how they color-coded. So we want to objectively define anticipative events for descriptive sentences, right? So who's involved, what's involved, what are they doing, why they are doing. When people are inside, they use walking feet. At school, most people go to the cafeteria for lunch. So notice there is no judgment in these sentences. They are just like, this is what we do, right? This is the expected behavior. For perspective, we're talked to you guys a little bit before, we're thinking about what our students' internal thoughts are, right? What their thoughts, their feelings, or their mood, okay? So many students like to eat their lunch with others. See, that's perspective. The other students or many students like it, right? Directive, try to avoid sentences with do not. This is really important. Research, it's really interesting. The research shows that if you tell a student what to do and what not to do, they are way more likely to choose what not to do. I don't know why. I'm not a sociologist, but it's really interesting. If you show if you want kids to walk inside and you show them a picture of kids running and say, we don't run, start running. More likely than if we show them a picture of kids walking and say, we use walking feet. So we really want to make sure that we have positive directive sentences. I will walk inside. I will drink my own milk, right? So we want to keep them positive. Let's go to the next slide. All right, now for every direct sentence, we want to use 2 to 5 descriptive sentences. Okay. We want to avoid using too many directive sentences because they will be lost without adequate contextualization. Tips, all right? Write from the learner's point of view. Make sure it's at the learner's comprehension level, that the length of the story is appropriate for the learner. Simple language, developmentally appropriate. Count your sentences. Make sure that there's 2 descriptive for every one that directs. If you can include the learner in the story, use pictures and, like I said, incorporate the learner if you can. So here's a couple examples. There may be times in class when a classmate tries to help me. There's descriptive. This may happen when the teacher gives me a direction and I do not follow it right away. Again, it's descriptive. When a classmate is trying to name what I should do, descriptive. They are trying to remind me of what the teacher said. Even though I may not like it, my classmate is trying to be nice and helpful to me. And then here's the one directive. Next time my classmate tries to help me follow the teacher's directions, I will say, oh, thanks. Listen to what they say and remember they are trying to be helpful. Now that's kind of a little bit more complex where we have simpler ones, right? And I can't, my my share button is right over. I think it says normally I wear a t-shirt and pants. Buster Moon wears a suit with a red bow. So descriptive, descriptive. My suit has a red bow. Descriptive. I will wear a suit with a red bow in Peru. So it looks like this child has to wear a suit and they're getting ready to prepare him for that because suits really aren't that comfortable, right? So they have to prepare it. Here is an interesting social story that you can just find on Google, but I want you to think about what would you change, right? Eating breakfast. I get my breakfast. I sit at my desk. I open my breakfast. I eat my breakfast. I'm done. I throw it in the trash. What would you think is the problem with the social story? I know there's only a few of us here, but would anybody like to maybe share in the chat what you think the issue is with this? I'm going to give it a few more seconds. Okay, so with this interesting social narrative, this is actually more of a task analysis, right? And I think of a task analysis of the steps of the things that I need to do. Number 1, I get my breakfast. Number 2, I sit at my desk. Number 3, I open it up. Number 4, I eat it. And 5, I'm done. Hooray. Nowhere, it is in the first person, but nowhere in here are there any perspective sentences or descriptive sentences. So maybe we might want to say, instead of just, I get my breakfast, we could say, in the mornings when I come to, in the mornings I come to school. Many of my friends eat breakfast at this time. I like to eat breakfast at this time too. Do you see what I've done here? I've added those descriptive sentences, and then I can say, and I get my breakfast. Instead of saying I sit at my desk, right? I could say, all of the students in my classroom take a seat. I look around and go and see that my desk is open. I go sit at my desk. Again, 2 to the 1. Okay. My breakfast is usually closed up. Sometimes it's difficult to open, but I'm really strong. So I open up my breakfast myself. Once the breakfast is open, I grab my utensils and I eat my breakfast. I love the food that they serve at school. It is really yummy. After I finish my breakfast, I'm all done. I have all this trash on my desk and I can't work in class unless the trash is cleaned up. So I throw my I don't know, what do we want to call it? My plate into the trash. And now I'm ready to start my lessons. So we can take this task analysis and actually turn it into a story. This is not a story the way that it is, right? This is just a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we want to make it a little broader. Okay, so perspective, first person, most stories are I, right? Most stories are about the person and it uses the pronoun I. We never write a social story using the second person statements, the you statements. You need to do this. You need to do that. Sometimes they're written in the third person, like he does this or she does this. We saw a lot of that during COVID with the hand washing, or sneezing, coughing, wearing a mask. We saw a lot of those third person ones, but honestly, the social narratives are much more, they generally hit the nail on the head a lot more if they're in the first person, if we use the I statements, okay? The other thing is you want to use consistent perspective. So if I start with first person, I want it to be first person all the way. If I use third person, I want it to be third person all the way, okay? Now, if I'm talking in the first person about myself, And then we have a friend in there, of course, we're going to say he or she or they, right? If we have other people involved in the story, like they want to play with me. I think to myself, ooh, I want to have friends too. I say, yes, let's play, or I say, no, thank you, right? So you can have the he, she, they in there, but the story is in the first person, the I. We want to make sure that our tone is positive. So instead of saying, I hit people when I'm angry, right? We would say something more helpful would be, all children get angry sometimes. With practice, they learn to calm down. I like to say that when I'm at school sites and I see, especially my middle schoolers, they do this the most. When I see them running in the hallway, I'll say, walking feet, please. Because it's positive. It's like, just give me some walking feet. You know, I'm not fighting with you. I'm not like trying to argue with you. I just want you to walk instead of run. It's just a little bit safer. It has a different tone to it. It's more positive, right? And for our students that sometimes will take what we say the wrong way, we want to be as positive as we can so that the information actually gets to them versus walls being put up. So we want to have a really positive tone. We also want to be literal. We want to use, when we say something, we want it to be able to be interpreted literally. So walking feet, that means I walk in the hallway, right? Our feet are going to be walking. We want to use the clearest language possible. And we also want to make sure that the meaning matches, the intent matches what's stated, okay? So that's why you wouldn't use analogies or metaphors, right? Because unless it's specific to the student, like, I don't know, if there's something Mickey Mouse would say, maybe for that particular student, you might include like a Mickey Mouse metaphor, but I would really try to stay away from those and instead maybe use a picture of Mickey Mouse. We're not selling these. These are just for our students. So there shouldn't be any trademark issues, right? So if a child's into Paw Patrol, right? Maybe you want to use Paw Patrol. If a child really is a Swiftie and they love Taylor Swift, maybe use a picture of Taylor Swift, right? But don't use song lyrics, right? Because that may not be understood directly by the student. Story development, right? Who, what, when, where, why, and how. Remember the social cues. Sometimes our students miss the social cues or concepts, right? So for example, when a person smiles, that means that they're happy or they want to talk to me, right? Well, maybe our student is missing that. So we want to be really direct and say that in our social story. And then just remember the why is the most important. Don't get lost in all the details. Why are we writing this? And we want to make sure we hit that within the story so that it's really clear to the student. So we want to introduce the social story. And I think what's really important to remember is that the first thing is that we don't read the social story after the maladaptive behavior has occurred. So like the student's running, so we pull out the social story and read the social story about running in the hallway. That's not going to be a good idea. That's going to cause a fight, okay? However, if we read the social story about walking in the hallway before we go into the hallway, we've now reminded the student how to walk in the hallway in a very positive way, right? And you can read it consistently throughout the day. So I had a student, I do this regularly. Every school year, we have students who they matriculate from like preschool to kinder or 5th grade to middle school or 8th grade to high school, etc. So we'll create these social stories, these social narratives, and have them read regularly to the student so that they have less fear when they go into their new classroom, when they go to their new school, because going to a new school is very anxiety provoking for everyone, right? So if they're able to see pictures of the school, where the drinking fountain is, where the bathroom is, right? So we read it ahead of time. We don't read it to them the first day that they show up at the school. So you really want to be consistent with reading it until they're showing that they've understood the expectation, and then you can release out, you can fade away that reading. I know oftentimes there's questions about that. So if you have questions, you can ask at the end, or you can reach out to me through the district email. You want to make sure that the story is accessible for the student. And so I had a teacher who would put the students' social stories at the board, like at the whiteboard, and then they could come and check them out. Like they could come and read them whenever they wanted. You also want to monitor the effectiveness. And you can always rewrite the story. So let's say the student starts using the walking feet in one hallway, but they're not using it in a different hallway. Then you can update the social story or the social narrative to talk about that other hallway or whatever the case may be. You can always rewrite them, and you just change one little aspect about it. And again, you want to make them part of the learner's routine. The more you do it, and it could be about like the chocolate milk episode. So if I were in the classroom, or if I were a parent and we wanted to go out to eat, I would read the social story every night. We know that we're going to go to Cheesecake Factory on this day, right? So I would make sure that I'm reading this social narrative for 2 weeks before we go to Cheesecake Factory, every single day before bed. Then before we leave for Cheesecake Factory, I would read it again, right? The other thing that I would do is I'd bring the social story with me to the Cheesecake Factory so that it's there for them to look at and to remember, right? And you can point to what's going on. Oh, look, we're at Cheesecake Factory. Look, there's the cheesecake. Look, it's in your book too, right? So you're matching that to help with expected behaviors at the restaurant. So that's how I would do it at home, because I think that not only at school, but at home, these can absolutely be implemented. And I've actually helped parents to write them, and they've been very successful. So we want to implement with fidelity, which means we want to implement the intervention in the way in which it was researched, okay? And at school, we data track that, and you can actually have, data track it at home too, if you would like. And here's the information on how you can implement with fidelity, right? Use checklists, use fact sheets, go to the self-learning modules. Affirm, which is a wonderful, wonderful resource for evidence-based practices. There are over 30 evidence-based practices, and so I highly recommend going to Affirm's website. And you can take an entire module, which is basically what I'm going over for social narratives, but you could also do it for other evidence-based practices, and it would be like a reminder. It's pretty great. Here's an example of a fidelity checklist and a data collection. Right, data collection for monitoring. And you can see that we would have the date, we'd figure out what the target behavior is, and we can look at target behavior 2, and we can look at this over a period of weeks to see if the behavior is improving, the targeted behavior is improving. As I'm just looking at the time, I want to make things good. Okay, we're good. So as I mentioned before, Carol Gray's company created an app. This is the link for that app. However, what I want to show you is that there are a lot of other apps, okay? So, and these are apps that you can purchase. I believe some of them also work on Android, not just iOS devices. Storybook Maker, I also believe, and I could be wrong, but I think Storymaker or Storybook Maker, you can also use on a. And what's really nice about them is you can create them, and then you have they have pictures that are already there, and they make it really okay to create these social narratives. However, I'm a big believer in Google because Google's free. I don't like to spend money if I don't have to. I think it's because I've been in education so long, but why would we spend money if we don't have to, right? So you could just use Google Slides to create your stories. And the nice thing about creating it in Google Slides is it can just go on your phone, and then you can just do the social narrative if you're out in the community, and you would have it along with you. Google Slides are also really easy to print, and they're very accessible. So I'm hoping this works. I want to see, oh, look at that. Look at that. So here's an example of a social narrative for walking down the street that I created for a student who was having difficulty stopping at and I have many, many students who have difficulty stopping at driveways. So if we go through this one, it's walking down the street. I like to take community walks with my friends. When we're walking, we have to watch for cars all the time. I look for cars at each driveway I get to. When I get to, and here's the directive, when I get to a driveway, I stop and I look before I cross it. It's written in the first person. The other thing that I want to point out is that these are just pictures that I pulled up from the internet. So you can go and take actual pictures of your neighborhood, but if you don't have the time or the energy, then just pull them up from online. Here I've got a picture of a driveway with cars in it. So we want to, etc. So the whole story is about looking, here we go. I look both ways and I look at drivers before I cross the street. And when it's safe, I go ahead and cross. So that's that one. Let's go back to our presentation. I want to show you next a presentation just with drawings. Now, the reason why I'm showing you this is because your child may already understand what drawings represent, but some children don't. And if your child doesn't, that's why you would use the photographs. But if your child understands drawings, then that's okay. I have a student who does not like going into the car at the end of the school day. School's finished, I'm going home, right? I get my backpack and I let up outside, right? So now I'm going to patiently wait to be picked up by mom, right? So we've got these images for the student to look at. Now, I also want to show you a power card because I think power cards are really fun. Here's an example of a power card for a fire drill. And I'm going to make it bigger. I wasn't lying when I tell you I make them all in Google Slides. Let me just show this one to you. Slideshow. Here we go. So you can see, right? Now we can just go through it and really simple, like boom, 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 boom. It doesn't have to be as extensive as a social narrative story, right? We've got our pictures, we've got some drawings. Notice the happy face. It makes other people happy when I am safe and practice the fire drill with them. And then as the bonus is if I want to walk to the track with, I want to walk with the track with all my classmates and teachers, right? So that's what we do during a fire drill. So you get this bonus out of it. So the power card is usually just one page. All right. I'm really hoping that you guys all saw that, but I think you did. It's been a while since I've used Zoom. So those are just some examples, right, for using Google Slides. At this point, I actually talked faster than I normally do. I'm gonna just take a second and I'm gonna plug Captain again, captain.ca.gov and the Affirm website. It's Affirm with one F. And if you just Google or go into your search bar and put in Affirm plus autism, and again, it's Affirm with one F, you'll get to those modules. They're all free. They are amazing. And it'll take you like 2 hours to get through them. You can get through them a little bit faster than that, especially if you're not aiming for a certificate, because then you don't have to worry about the pre and passing the post test. But I can't plug that enough. So thank you guys for attending. I know that I'm going to stop sharing. I know that we don't have a ton of participants with us, but we have quite a few people that RSVP'd. Again, my name's Jackie Knight. It's jknight@gov.net. And if you have questions, you're welcome to reach out to me.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. I do appreciate your time. It was very informative. What I would like for you to do, if you don't mind, is put your name in the chat. And I'm going to put my name in the chat, my email as well. I'm sorry, your email. And if you guys are interested in this presentation, feel free to email me and I can email you the presentation that was presented tonight. I will save it to make sure it's a PDF. But it was very highly informative and a much needed conversation. And I like how you broke it down in simple, palatable pieces. And I think that is what is difficult for a lot of people to do.
Right.
Well,
and the beauty about social narratives is, yes, it's research based for children with autism, but let's be honest. I know plenty of children that could benefit from a social narrative or, or a power card just on like in their shower before they go to bed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or the bedtime routine, or not crawling into mom or dad's bed at night, like all those things. Yeah. And so I think that even though it's research for who have autism, I think that it can benefit all children at a certain stage in their life, right? Everybody develops a little bit differently. But it doesn't mean just because it's research for children with autism doesn't mean that it can't be used for children of all different ability levels.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I agree. Okay. Well, I do want to thank the participants who participated. I do hope you all found this conversation meaningful. Again, please share it with your network. We will upload this onto our GUSD website tomorrow, so you can look for that in our family engagement section on the GUSD website. With that being said,
I just want to ask if there are any questions. We've got our two participants, we've got two people who are with us right now, and I'm wondering if either of them have any questions for us right now. And it's okay if you don't.
I'm not.
I promise I won't take offense.
I didn't see any. I didn't see any at this time.
Okay.
So.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, but again, feel free to email myself or Jacqueline, and we can definitely assist if you have any questions. Okay. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and conclude the webinar. Jacqueline, I really value your time, and I appreciate you stepping in and speaking tonight.
I love doing it, and I'm happy to do more, Sherelle. You made this super easy. You are a wonderful host.
Thank you. All right. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.